The following is intended only for mature audiences. Always consult legal and medical professionals when needed. Viewer discretion is advised. See, I start right off on mute. You believe that? Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Terra Turas. This evening, in the upper left-hand corner, is one of our new folks that we're going to be seeing more of, is Kelly Hurst. And down right on the very bottom is a returning guy, Mr. Malcolm Spears, all the way from Canada. Malcolm, if you would, tell me again, where in Canada are you from?
I'm in Montreal.
I'm in Montreal. I keep wanting to say Quebec, and I know that that's not right, so I'm like, okay, I'll ask. This evening, we've got something that's a little bit of a different kind of thing for folks. If you had watched our shows previously, we had talked and spoken about manifestation and the law of attraction. This evening, we're going to go a little bit more in depth on that. This evening, it's one of those things that if we don't pay attention, it can get away from us. And then if there's a group of people that are paying attention to the same thing, it really can get out of hand rather quickly. And before I get into all of that, if you are interested, in the last quarter hour of the show, we take one person from the gallery, if you will, from our chat room. If you are interested in asking our panel a question that's on your mind and have some advice that comes from our readers, put an X and a number 1 in the comment section, and then we'll know who we have to be able to draw from. And I'll make that announcement here again about halfway through the show. But at the quarter hour, the last quarter of the hour, we'll choose somebody from our chat room, and we'll be able to interact with each other. Now, here's the fun part. In our show previous to now, we covered manifestation, the law of attraction, and the things that are going on, the things that happen. Manifestation, as we know it, is when we set our intention, our desire, our focus on achieving something, and we stay focused for elongated days, periods of time, in order to help bring that into our life. The law of attraction talks all about it, and we all do it to some degree or another. But the law of attraction and manifestation never turns off. It never takes a break. It never goes away. It's not something that as long as you're paying attention to it, it works, and then it stops when you stop. It's there, just like your heartbeat. It is going all the time. The problem, and what spawned this evening's show, is what does that create when you're not paying attention? And this was the question and something that was brought up by Kelly. So Kelly, if you would, I'm going to ask you if you would explain just a little bit what your thoughts are on that.
Well, with manifestation, I was thinking about how, if someone is doing something and they have one intention, but they're not paying attention to what is actually happening behind them, and then they change something somehow, their brain is just not functioning in the way that they want it to, and then things just go off course. For instance, I might be manifesting like a pay raise, and then I'm thinking, oh, I really want to make money, and then the only way I get the money is because someone I care about dies and I get an inheritance. Clearly that was not my intention at all, but that's kind of how I'm thinking of, like, the misdirection, or if someone creates something like an epitaph, you can go in different directions that way.
So in essence, if they are thinking for 8 hours a day about manifesting money, And then they get into a chat room with other people, and all of them become dour. Let's say, for grins and giggles, this entire chat room, 30, 40 people, is all talking about politics. And all they do is turn around and carp and complain. They're all upset. They all have a lot of negative energy that is spilling out into the world. What kind of thing might that create?
More destruction, more chaos, more upheaval. You have a certain number of people, their thought processes might be based on fear, and fear creates chaos. If you look at things that are going on in the world right now, there's so many things in this world with, politics. There's so many varying degrees of opinions, whether or not it's our politics or worldwide politics, people have their opinions, and they don't really like to be disagreed with either, and that's based on fear because everyone thinks that they're correct. And then what ends up happening is, everyone's complaining, social media, one story gets out, it was really something else. It's kind of like playing telephone, where, you start off with one type of thing that you meant to say, and it ends up being 10 different things at the end, or something completely not even related to what they actually meant when they started out with that, such as politics. They joke about fake news all the time, but in some sense, I think it's really just about fear. The one idea gets misconstrued, and with media, fear is like ratings. So, that's, if you look at it that way, a lot of people, they can create the chaos, just by the fear and wondering, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm trying to think here. Just so many different perspectives, really.
Malcolm, I'm going to ask you, when we talk about things of accidental manifestation, what kind of things come to your mind? And what you might have seen in your sojourns that would cover some of that?
Well, one of the more fun ones is Lynn, who was still traveling a lot at the time, asked just she was just talking with a girlfriend, and she said, I really wish somebody close to me would get a dog that I could love and cuddle, but not be responsible for. And within a couple of hours, the connection was made with me. And I had no idea that she'd done this. I was I became very allergic to my cat, like almost overnight. And I was giving the cat away, and I was going to buy like one of those King Kong-sized bags of kibble at the pet food store. So I'm in line at the store, and the woman in front of me has got this little tiny poodle puppy. It was just basically a big ball of fluff. So I picked up the woman never saw me. I picked up the dog. I fell in love with it completely. And I was going to ask the woman, are you looking for a home for your dog? But a stranger asked you that. I didn't want to go there. So when she was winding up, I put the dog back down, and she just exited and went out the door. So I started talking with the clerk, and the clerk says, oh, yeah, that woman was looking for a home for her dog. So by the time I got into the parking, she was long gone. And I left my name and number at the store, and sure enough, the woman came back in that week. But I'd phoned Lynn and explained that I had a chance to get a puppy poodle, and she's just screaming on the phone, get it, get it. And the dog turned out to be the most fantastic, most enjoyable dog. It was just love at first sight. And I was manifesting someone else's wish. But it was so precise, and I think there was a 1 or 2 hour time lag on this one.
Wow.
So
That's actually really quick. For me, when I look at people and to say accidental manifestation, you've got a mother and father and 2 grown kids that have jobs. And all of a sudden, somewhere in the house, Dad starts to get upset because work is becoming bad. Upsets Mom. Mom gets upset. Upsets the kids. I mean, it's this vicious little circle. And they start complaining about money or they start complaining about vehicle not running well, and all of a sudden within a couple of days' time, somebody's either lost their job or somebody's car broke down. These are the accidental sides of manifesting. And people may at times not really pay attention to that. Would you say that is true? Would you say most people are not paying attention? Kelly?
I would say they're not. People, it's how someone always says, think positive, because thoughts become things. You have, you're thinking about something so negative and like your job, maybe you're having a really bad day and you're like, oh, I hate this job. I want to find a different job. I'm so sick of it. And then 3 days later, you get a pink slip saying, hey, your job's done. It's like, well, you hated it so much, so you don't have to worry about it anymore. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, they can definitely have that. That wasn't your intent, but from constantly putting it out there, you basically have manifested that negative reaction. So.
Malcolm?
I find that most people have trouble manifesting because they're going that way. And they're not focused, they're not keeping any kind of train of thought. But when they start to get into fear, into negativity, absolutely, they can create a self-fulfilling prophecy, mm-hmm. as you were just mentioning with the jobs. Mm-hmm. And I have seen that happen, and things just start going from bad to worse. And that's because their fear is getting them to be more focused on what's going on rather than the sort of general thinking chaos. And that's what that can create a whole lot of chaos in your life just by focusing on that. So what you tend to focus on is what you tend to manifest.
I would wholeheartedly agree. Now we're going to take a step into something that is that world of plausible. Because this is what Kelly had mentioned earlier, a couple of weeks ago, and it really caught my attention. So I'm going to let her explain. Talk to us about what group manifestation may do, and I do say may.
I am a writer, creator, and lots of artistic people will tell you, when you put something out there, it's almost like your child, your baby. We joke around about it, but in a sense it is. So such is the case with pop culture. One example would be Slender Man. Anyone that has anything to do with the horror community, or even anyone that just watches horror movies in general or is curious, somewhere, somehow, someone's at least heard about it at least once. And there's been cases where children have supposedly seen it. It's become so deep into the collective consciousness with all of us that all of a sudden you've got children plotting to kill their friends in school because they're trying to conjure Slender Man, because the mythos starts growing and growing and growing, and all it was just a story that a guy wrote to win a contest. And it just progressed from there. And I think when you start getting into, as a creator, I think you also have to be conscious of what it is you're putting out there. So when I'm writing something, there's usually like kind of a tied up end or sort of a happy ending, as happy as you can get, because I don't want to leave that open to something that's so negative. And I don't want to put something out there into the world, because I guarantee you the person that wrote it had no idea it was going to blow up like it did. But it's like I said before, it's almost like playing a game of telephone. Everyone has a piece of the story. The mythos behind the character has grown and grown and grown. And then you have these people that think that, it's a real thing. Pretty soon people start seeing it. It wasn't anything that anyone had ever heard of 20 years ago. But with the internet, social media, people playing games, it's a video game now and a movie. I mean, it's fascinating to me how we can do that as human beings. It's almost like it's almost like we're part of a big computer. It's the best way I can kind of compare it. And what we're putting out there, with the negative connotations that are behind it, the things that kids have done, the movies that were made because of it. In one case, you have a guy who wrote a really cool story and he was famous because of it. On the other side, you've got people that have taken it and ran with it into a whole completely different direction that I'm sure he never intended. But it's, through lots of thinking, creating, it's like the idea of a voodoo doll even. Someone is creating this little thing and their intention is something, that's not a positive manifestation by any means, but it's almost when you create a character or you create a thing and you pass it along or you publish a book. Look at Stephen King even. Some of the things that he's written, people are like, oh, I've seen something that happened just like that, or, Pet Cemetery. I mean, it sounds strange, but it's amazing when you go even just read a little bit on the internet or see something, and someone somewhere has a story where they're telling, oh, this happened to me, and then it just grows and grows and grows from that point.
And that brings in, that's group consciousness that is giving energy to a fictional piece until it forms into something that can interact in our world. And yes, where that something might have come from may not be the happiest of places that we would really want to talk about. Malcolm, in your sojourns, have you ever run across something that was created by a group of people, and let's call it good or bad, that they weren't really paying attention?
Okay. When I was a teenager and I was just starting out in mediumship, some high school friends of mine decided they'd seen some horror movie, so they decided to do a magic circle and try and invoke something. From what I heard, they invoked something and they all freaked out and they scattered, they broke the circle. And whatever it was that they conjured up stayed in the house for quite a while. They could hear it going up and down the stairs, making noise in the house, that kind of thing. And they were so completely freaked out by this, they never went near anything like that again. But the person who lived in the house was really was disturbed, I think, for a good couple of months by all kinds of weird things going on, that they had no idea what they were doing.
Isn't that most often the case? Mm. See, and that brings me up to the one that I was thinking more along the lines of, you have parents that have a younger child, 5, 7 years old, parents not getting along, or one parent being abusive to the other constantly, and now you've got 3 people that are in the fear-based mode, like you mentioned, and all of a sudden, all of this attention on fear and don't hurt me and all of that brings into being something from the darker side of life that we really don't want. Mm. And it could be, just like you, a poltergeist of some nature or some minor kind of thing that just wants to create havoc and knock things over, all the way up to having the young child possessed because they're so wide open, that they really don't know, or this thing stalks them as a dark shadow for years. These are the manifestations that people aren't paying attention to. It's just like the same thing. If somebody is complaining and having a difficult time day after day after day driving to work, pretty soon they might start to experience an oil leak, flat tire, car doesn't run well, and they keep wondering why. And the mechanic goes, dude, what are you doing driving this thing through Antarctica and then into the Sahara Desert? What's going on? Even the mechanic, they can fix what has happened, but they don't understand why this rash of incidents has gone on. Now, how do you explain to a mechanic, this was manifestation and they got what they were looking for or what they attracted? Mechanic could probably take a monkey wrench and want to work you over. What is some of the... I don't want to say worst. Let's flip to the other side. Kelly, what is some of the more positive accidental manifestation that you may have seen from an individual, small family, or group?
Well, there was a presentation that I did last summer for my preternatural club that I belong to, and I was just trying to kind of state what we're talking about tonight. So I had everyone go around the room and create this happy-go-lucky character type thing, and everyone was kind of like not really in the mood to be there. They're kind of like, this is good. I'm glad we're having a meeting. This is kind of fun to see everyone, but I got stuff to do. I got places to be. What we ended up doing was I said, well, let's create something. So I went around the room. I gave this fake backstory to this character, and so we went around the room, and everyone drew some aspect of this creature. We just invented a creature. And by the end of it, everyone was smiling. They were so happy because of what they had created by drawing little aspects of this creature. One person put horns on it, another person put hooves, someone put like a beard on it. I mean, it was ridiculous, but it was kind of fun. It was just an interesting activity to kind of talk about manifestation, because it basically was the same topic that we were talking about. But by the end of it, what it did was it gave everyone this idea that, oh, hey, this is going to be a good thing. We're doing something good here. So because everyone thought they were doing something that was fantastic, or they were creating this really pleasant character, they ended up being in a really good mood at the end of it. Another example I can think of is I had a huge crush on a guy in college, and I just kept thinking about him all the time. And then a friend of mine and I we were talking about these two boys, and they were roommates at the time. And what ended up happening was we ran into them at a party like 2 hours later and got to talk to them. I ended up not really liking the guy that much afterwards. He wasn't exactly who I thought he was, but at least you got, I think, with girls, that's what you do when you're that age. But I think, by us talking so much about it, we ended up manifesting meeting them at a party. So it was kind of interesting because they weren't supposed to be there anyway. So, I mean, those are more positive ends of it. I don't know. I have stories for days, but
no, it's good because these are the things that people need to hear. I'm not going to sit here and preach doom and gloom all night, and that's not what our show is about. But I want people to be able to see both aspects. If you've got one end of the yardstick, you've got the other out there too. So we say manifestation accidental. We need to see the contrast in between the two. Which, Malcolm, that brings me to you. What would be one of the... let's even go a step further. What is one of the more positive accidental manifestations, or a more odd accidental manifestation that you might have heard of or seen?
Well, I've got two. One of them is a very spiritual guy I used to know. He's a bureaucrat, works for the Quebec government. And when there's somebody that comes into his section that he really doesn't like or has conflict with, he really understands manifestation. He starts immediately focusing and praying for them to get a better job with more pay somewhere else. So he keeps it really clean and positive, but it has I thought that was very well done.
That's actually humorous to me, because here's a guy that hired somebody going, okay, you are doing such a great job, we want you to go and do it somewhere else. Go be... That's funny. That's funny.
I've always liked that. We get one night, this couple, it was at my house, and the roads were particularly bad that night. It was wintertime. And the guy says, yeah, no problem. He had a four-wheel drive Toyota. And I took one look at him being able to just pull right out of his parking spot with no grief at all after being plowed in. And I just thought to myself, that's great. I'd love to have one of those. And that was it. I never thought about it again. A couple of years, about 3 years later, the car that I had was dying a very slow death, and I knew it was time to start shopping for something else. And I was looking for that model of Toyota, Actually, I was looking for a Subaru, but a friend said, no, don't bother with Subaru. I see you driving a green Toyota station wagon. So I started shopping for them, and I found a dealership just to check the prices, the book value on this car. And the guy says to me, well, you know what? We just took in this car on trade yesterday. It sounds like exactly what you're looking for. And I said, well, what color is it? He says, green. I said, I'll be right over. And I ended up driving the, I think I was one level of model different than the car that I had asked for. And I got a super price on it, and I drove it off the lot the last day in July, which was also predicted. So wow. It was cool. But I only ever asked for it once, but the request went in.
This is something that I want to bring up here later on after we take a break, is I want to take all of us to go through little bits and pieces of steps about manifestation, because it's so important. But that it's amazing that your focus was so tight, so correct. You know, it's like I tell people, if your intention and your desire are aligned and your action is the same, then you're in the right lane of processing for manifestation. You know, yeah. If you're thinking, I want to win the lottery, and you're thinking that you want to win the lottery for horrendous things, like, I don't even know what, more than likely not going to happen. You know, or if you're thinking, I want to win the lottery, and you never buy a lottery ticket, we know that's not going to work. Well, these are the commonistic things, and I find that oftentimes if the three of us were sitting in the same room and having a conversation, we might forget some of the basics, you know, because we're all accustomed to it. We're all working on this on a daily basis, to where if we brought a newbie in and sat them down to have coffee or whatever with us, they would be wide-eyed going, oh my God, what the hell are you talking about? You know, so it's going to be kind of filling in the blank. But first, right now, just to give us a break, if everybody that is in the chat room would hang tight, we're going to take a break so we can grab something to drink real quick. We'll be back right after this. Thank you for sticking with us through our momentary interlude. It gives us a chance to grab something to drink real quick and stretch a little bit. This evening's topic, we're talking about accidental manifestation. And it is something, again, that a lot of people may stop and look at it and say, well, now what are we talking about? Well, we all speak about the law of attraction, manifesting things coming into your life, and it is always for a benefit of ourselves or a group of people around us or for the health and well-being of other people. But the law of attraction, again, doesn't stop because we stop thinking about it. It doesn't stop when we go to bed. It does not stop when we go to sleep. This is something that runs all day, every day, for your entire life. And it's those times that we get upset. It's those times, as we've all seen, that we live in fear. If people are running around thinking, I have a lack of something, well, by God, you're going to manifest a lot more lack of whatever it is. And it may run right into something that you don't have a lack of, but now all of a sudden you do. Because you're thinking, I have a lack of something. Therefore, it's going to come about. People may have turned around and read the book The Secret, or watched the movie The Secret. It talks all about manifestation. Or they may have read Esther and Jerry Hicks' Ask and It Is Given, or The Teaching of Abraham, which again talks about manifestation. Or you may have read Jack Canfield. You know, there's a lot of authors that have spoken about it. And I would encourage anybody to go and pick these books up. So here again, when you are thinking, manifesting, Kelly, what are some of the highlights of what you tell people when they are trying to manifest something in their life?
I will tell people, I have a day job that helps me work with people on a regular basis, but a lot of times if someone's having a bad day where they think the situation isn't going to get any better, what I find works for me and for other people, you know, it just beginning parts of manifestation is writing it down in a journal, maybe in present tense. You know, if you're having a really bad day, I'll even tell people just stop what you're doing and take a 5-minute break, take a deep breath, go to the bathroom, whatever you got to do, and just tell yourself everything's fine. You know, it's nice to have like a mom or a dad that says, oh, everything's going to be fine. Or like I tell my husband, like, oh my gosh, this happened. He's like, it's going to be fine. You know, just hearing that, you kind of redirect your thinking. So if you don't have anyone, tell yourself, this is going to work out. I'm going to be fine. I'm not going to be nervous. I'm going to get a job. You know, I'm going to get an interview. You know, they're not going to think I'm old. You know, so it's writing it down will end up kind of helping you think this is something that's going to happen because you're reading it in writing. And I find that is something that helps out quite a bit. You know, hands-on, you know, if they don't want to write something, you know, I'll be like, visualize it, you know, talk to someone about, you know, what it is that you want to do with your life or the situation. You know, if you're broke, you're overdrawn at the bank, okay, we know you made a mistake. So what's the next thing that you can do from that point? Only can move ahead, you know, past is in the past. Can't go back and change it. Shouldn't have bought that outfit, but whatever. But, you know, you just kind of have to just take a breather, you know, start retraining your brain sometimes to not think so negatively all the time, you know, and it's always fun to talk to a friend and vent. But sometimes I think you start venting with people and then they start venting about different problems and you know, it turns into this eruption, this volcanic eruption of everyone's complaining, you know, but on the onset, if you want to change that, what are some positive things? You know, what are some things about your morning that weren't terrible? You know, oh, you had gas in your car, great. You know, you might have got a flat tire, but hey, you still have gas in your car.
Yep.
It's working. It runs.
Malcolm, what are some of the things that you would tell people when they are beginning to learn about manifestation? How would you, in your sojourns, in your teaching, how do you express that to people?
Well, something very simple to start with is focus on where you want to go. Don't focus on the potholes. Because the minute you start focusing on what you don't want, that tends to be what shows up. And there's people out there who are, if their life path number is 8, Usually these are people who are natural manifestors to start with, and it's a lot closer to the surface for them. But it's persistence, and it's depending on where they're at. If they're very visual, have them do a storyboard. If they're kinesthetic, have them act it out. There's all kinds of ways. However your brain functions, there's always a way to adapt to the manifestation process. And I really do. We used to do I used to hold circles quite a bit. Not so much anymore, but we would always have a healing aspect to the circle, and we would always have a space where people could ask for what they wanted, and we would all put energy on it, and we would just go briefly around the circle and have the whole group focus on. I try get people to make it as simple and as clear as possible, because if you start having like all kinds of parts, if then what, and all these this convoluted pipe dream type of stuff, no, keep it really simple, and be very clear with what you want. There's a restaurant that I still go to. There was a guy that used to be a waiter there, and I ran into him recently. He was a customer, and he loves the power of attraction. He's gone from being a waiter to being an airline pilot.
Wow.
And he said he couldn't have done it without the law of attraction.
That's amazing.
So he really, it took him several years, but he's got exactly what he wanted.
See, that's one of the things that I try to tell people, and I look at them, and that's a very huge thing. When I talk with people and I tell them, I say, look, there's three things. Intention, what is it that you really want? Desire, how bad do you want it? And then action. You've got to do something about it in order to set this whole thing into motion. And I'm guessing that airline pilot now sat down, had a huge intention, a desire to become more in his life, and then slowly started taking actions to get there. Otherwise, he never would have. And that one's a key also. Persistence. Mm-hmm. This is not, manifestation isn't something that you can sit down at lunchtime on your day job and go, oh, I'm going to have $1 million and stop. It'll never happen. The same thing if you sit there and say, I'm going to have $1 million, and it doesn't happen within a couple of days or 30 days. No, this shit doesn't work. I'm not going to do that anymore. And you start kicking the can. Guess what's going to happen? Not only are you not going to have the $1 million, you're probably going to go in the other direction and be broke. Mm-hmm. Again, that's the accidental part of the manifestation that people don't pay attention to. Everybody has heard it from day one. If you start a job, finish the job. And that means seeing it all the way through. And that works wholeheartedly in intention. In our chat room, a gentleman by the name of Chris, he said, manifestation has been a big part of my weight loss health journey. And I will tell you, both of you, you don't know Chris, but Chris has lost a huge amount of weight. I met him, and he was this guy that I had to wrap my arms around when I gave him a reading. And I've seen pictures of him now, and I'm blown away. But he said, it's a big part of my weight loss health journey. He goes, but part of that being visualizing, you have to visualize it as the present, as if it already exists. Because if it does, rather than the future, visualizing and reciting what I am versus what I want to be. And that brings up a huge point. I think that we would all agree, if you are focusing your manifestation as an external, then it never becomes internal. It never really happens. Would you both agree to that?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. I mean, you gotta have the trifecta going for you. And it sounds like he really put that into action.
Oh,
how I quit smoking was I had a lot of motivation. I had 3 spots on my right lung. This was in 1990, I went to a hypnotist, and it was a 2-session process. And what you went in for the first session, he did a general relaxation and got you into whatever zone he wanted. And then your job you had to go back to him exactly the same time, the same day, the week following. But during the week, the intervening week, you were supposed to, every single time you lit a cigarette, you needed to look at exactly the circumstances and the reasons why you're lighting that cigarette. And then imagine yourself how you would handle that exact same situation as a non-smoker, and do it visually. And so when I went in a week later, I did all my homework. And what he did is he put me into a deep state of hypnosis, and he switched the non-smoker for the smoker. And I stopped on the spot and never smoked again.
Wow. Now, that again, people wonder if this stuff is really true. And Malcolm's living proof of it. Chris is living proof. We all are. But that's amazing in and of itself, because stopping smoking is a very difficult thing. Hands down. I'm going to backtrack a little bit now. And I'm going to start with you, Malcolm. If someone were in the middle of a crappy manifestation, and they are unaware of that they've created this reality, what simplistic things would you tell them to help them unwind all of that and start on a new path, or eradicate that current manifestation?
I would have them immediately start working on what they want. Again, is don't focus on the potholes, because if you do, you drive right into them. Have them also forgive themselves for having chosen to create something negative.
Okay, now, why is that important?
Because otherwise, if they start beating themselves up for having created something negative, it's just continuing the negative spin. And forgiving themselves gets them to a space where they can let go of whatever it is they're manifesting, the letting go of the need to do it. And there's ways to clear that, but basically self-forgiveness is really important at that stage. And, it gives them the space to be able to create something different, something better for themselves.
The reason that I ask is because I don't think a lot of people stop to think about that particular aspect. Their subconscious, their intuitive side, the rest of them pretty much understands that they're the ones that have created the reality that they are living in. And to say that, and that, Malcolm, is really powerful when you stop and say, I forgive myself for creating this mess. People typically don't do that. They don't eradicate that negative aspect. So I'm sure you would agree what happens then is they go to try to do something positive, and the other half of them goes, yeah, but I really still feel really horrible about what I've done.
Mm-hmm.
And then the new manifestation is either filled with cracks and stuff, or it doesn't work, and it brings them right back to that point of life sucks and I'm just not going to do this anymore. Anyhow, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I thought it was massively important that people understood why you say that.
No, it helps. It helps greatly, because if they're beating up on themselves, how could I be so whatever to create this? The self, like things like Ho'oponopono will help on that direction, but self-forgiveness is huge, and then that frees you to open up because you're letting go of that self-criticism, and you can then start to open your heart, which I think is really the key of manifestation. Is you're going to wish something with your heart, and that level of energy creates very magical things, and things can happen very quickly.
And I agree. Things. I'll talk about that in just a second, but there's something that I want to touch on about that. Kelly, what would be some of the things if you found a person or even a group that is in the middle of a shitstorm? Everybody, pardon my French. I want it to really sink in. If they're in the middle of this stuff, What would be some of the basics that you would tell someone that they can latch on to begin to change that manifestation, the current state of being?
I think this is a hard one, but I deal with this all the time. Because everyone's different. It's, maybe start talking to someone that's going through whatever it is that they're going through at that moment, and just start asking them questions about it, kind of like a therapist might do. Why did you do this? And if they start thinking, I have no idea why I did this, then it might be easier to change their brain or change their way of thinking into kind of turning their thinking more positively, because if the negative isn't working, maybe you should look at this direction. I'm picturing like a teacher with diagrams, and if this doesn't work, plan B, and it's just kind of giving them a new perspective, I think, through, communicating, I have to communicate all day long, and I have to be able to talk to people. So I think just being able to talk, ask them questions, let them start thinking about those things. So just like Malcolm said, being able to forgive yourself. Well, the first thing you got to be able to do is understand that you even feel that way about yourself. Some of that stuff is so subconscious that they don't even realize it. And for instance, look at someone that might be an addict. They've got all kinds of pain, and they just think they can't stop having a good time. Well, why do you want to numb yourself all the time? That there's got to be something that makes you that way. So just kind of maybe starting off with a conversation, maybe, hey, why did this happen? And I just kind of go from there, see how they react to just owning up to it, that they're the ones that are making this happen. So.
And I would agree with all of that. For me, and it is the one thing that I think all of us have, we know it in the back of our mind, and here again, because we do this all the time, one of the other biggest keys of manifestation is gratitude, being thankful for. So I tell people, it doesn't matter what happened yesterday. It doesn't matter what happened 10 minutes ago. What are you doing now? What are you focusing on now? And where do you want to be tomorrow? If people have a difficult time working their way through something, then let's just tackle until the end of Sunday and call it 1 week. One day at a time, what can we do through this week to be able to see better things? And I ask them, if you need to, just like we've said, write something down. Write down what it is that you want to see really start to take shape in the next week. And keep it simple. Because just like Malcolm mentioned, if you've got this convoluted kind of narrative of, well, I'm going to do this, which will allow me to do that, which will allow this to happen, which that can happen, which then this, because then I can do this, and then I'll be happy. No. It's not going to happen, because you're going through too many twist turns, and it's dependent on too many other things to happen. So cut right to the chase and say, I'm going to go from here to here. Small steps to begin with until you start to walk that walk. And when you see something happen, somebody that normally doesn't talk to you gives you a phone call. When the phone call's done, say, I really appreciate that. I'm so happy that that person reached out. The people that you work with, if they suddenly become a little bit nicer, or the ones that really don't like you and you don't get along with them, that they leave you alone, stop and say, I am so glad that these things happened at work today. It's that feeling of gratitude to help remind you what you're thinking, where you're at, why this is all happening. Now, let's kick back for a moment and look again at accidental manifestation. What would be 3 things, and I'll start with you, Kelly. What would be 3 things that you would tell people to steer away from to make sure they don't accidentally manifest something?
Well, like I was saying before, it's hard to retrain someone's brain to not do that, but there are little things that you can do to keep yourself from moving in that direction when bad things happen. There was I can't think of the woman's name, but there was a meditation that I did one time where she says, wake up every day and think of 3 things that you're grateful for. Just starting your day out a little bit better. Stop the first thing in the morning shouldn't be something that is a negative thought. You know, there's a wonderful comedian by the name of Cat Williams who has this thing where he says, "How are you angry at bacon first thing in the morning?" It's like first thing in the morning, you know, someone's complaining. So I would tell someone, don't complain. Don't let a complaint be the first thing that comes out of your mouth first thing in the morning, because that's going to direct your entire day. And, you know, to steer away from it, start journaling. Even if you only write one sentence about something, you know, even if it's just to get your emotions out, that kind of helps get rid of that negativity by, you know, exercising it, basically, like exercising your demons. And there's a really awesome book called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, I think I might have pronounced that incorrectly, where she talks about journaling every day. And it's to help people kind of overcome some of those day-to-day things. Even someone that doesn't journal, write down one thing, you know, in the morning. It's like, oh, I had this weird nightmare. If that's your only sentence, that's your only sentence, fine. But at least it's redirecting. At least you're conscious of your feelings about things in your life. And eventually that one sentence starts turning into pages and pages and pages, you know, and you're getting it out. But I would redirect someone by simply saying, don't think of something negative first thing out of your day. Think of something positive. If there's people in your life that bring you down, you know, try to maybe steer away from those. If they're people that you work with, obviously you have to work with those people. Maybe you find ways to kind of steer work gossip conversations into a different direction. You know, that way, if you're having something that's really traumatic that happens, we can't prevent bad things from happening to us. You know, even the bad things sometimes teach us lessons about ourselves. You know, how you handle things. I have a friend that's always telling me, "You don't have patience." How do I overcome that? Start thinking of things that I can do to be more grateful and, you know, appreciate the time that it's taking to finally achieve something. You know, just start, like you said, be grateful. Maybe avoid some of those negative situations that operate on a more low negative frequency. You know, you want to kind of avoid some of that because it does rub off. Just like we were talking about the creation of, you know, Slender Man. You know, people start talking about something, it becomes a bigger and bigger thing. So just kind of avoid some of those situations, and I think you'll do a lot better.
But that's all. And again, it's being able to show people this collective, even though we all work in different aspects in the metaphysical field, and we all do different things, we all have much the same understanding of things to do, things not to do. Malcolm, what would you tell people 3 things to try not to do when they're manifesting?
Understand why you want what you want and be okay with that, and look for the emotional not to do, sorry. Keep everything in a positive light. Don't focus on the lack. Focus on what you want and stay out of doom and gloom. That's really huge. I mean, you have to keep out of that. The way to create something, and my understanding is this: if you have a thought with a strong emotion attached to it, that really creates a very strong message to your subconscious. So if you're always working on the positive, and I really like Kelly was mentioning first thing in the morning, these really strong positive statement can set up your whole day, which I wholeheartedly agree with. So you start retraining yourself to be a lot more positive. And most people don't manifest stuff because their brain just goes all over the place, like an untrained puppy. And
it's true.
It is true. So as you start to get more focus, I think it becomes a lot easier to create things. So that's what I would tell people to watch out for. Just sort of like busy-mindedness for no good reason. And because, you know, our brains just were taught like they're supposed to be running all the time rather than being more in the moment. Mm-hmm. So getting out of that, becoming focused. Gratitude, I think, is very important. The attitude of gratitude, I think someone calls it. Mm-hmm. And a friend of mine usually goes with whenever she achieves something, she always says, "Wow, how much better can that get?"
Oh, wow.
And it's I really like that concept.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That's huge, Malcolm, because it takes everything, wipes it all away, and flushes the negative, like right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's only focusing on how much better can it get. I wonder what would happen. I'm going to have to try that. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
See, this is why I love having conversations in our group and as well as with people that are in the chat room or listening on podcast. You hear something that might stick with you, and that one's going to stick with me for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. I stop and I take a look at people. I read a lot. I read a lot in science. I read a lot of fantasy. So my brain is just everywhere. The first thing that I would tell people is do not disbelieve what you are capable of. Don't stop believing. The Journey song, Don't Stop Believing. It's wholeheartedly true. The universe does not care if you're manifesting a grain of sand or a house.
Mm-hmm.
To the universe, it is the same amount of energy it takes to bring it from wherever it's at into your life. And if you truly don't believe that, your manifestation is going to go bonkers everywhere, okay? Or you're going to get a portion of what you're looking for. And if that happens, and you only get a portion of a rundown home that you really didn't want to begin with, be thankful. Stop and say, hey, look what I manifested. It may not be much, and I may not really want that, but look what came to me out of all of this. Not this, well, by God, I didn't get the 14-room mansion that I wanted. Stop. First, you were not really realistic to begin with, and you did manifest a home, somewhere to be. That's the gratitude part. Be happy about it. You know, it's this quantum kind of thing. Everything is attached to everything else. And the universe is nothing but energy. Our bodies are nothing but energy. We're filled of it. So always believe in yourself and what you're doing. The second thing that I would tell people, keep your vision simple.
Yeah.
If all you are going to start out doing, and this was covered in one of the movies, envision yourself somebody bringing and asking if you would like a cup of coffee. Manifest a cup of coffee somewhere in your week. When you do, and somebody goes, hey, I was getting some coffee. I've got an extra one. Would you like this? By God, you stop. You make sure that you are thankful and understand what you did. Don't take the manifestation, the law of attraction, and the first couple of steps. Go, I'm going to get $1 million, a 14-room home, a Ferrari, and whatever. One, because you truly don't believe it when you started. So do the simple things first. And keep it simple until you start walking on that path. The third thing that I tell people, this has got to become ingrained in your brain every day. Don't think for a moment that you can do this every Wednesday at 2 p.m. and really knock it out of the park. Because you won't believe it. Pick a time every day, stop, sit down, close your eyes, envision, feel. What does that feel like coming to you? What does it feel like to be that way? Even as Chris mentioned, what does it feel like now to be that extra 20 pounds lighter? You've got to feel it. It's got to be there, but it has to be every day. This isn't a pick up the phone, manifest it once, and have it come. Malcolm, you're I'm not going to say odd. You are a case that is a rule of thumb at times. However, I will frame it in this fashion. Anyone that is walking on a path, believes what they are doing is sincere, true, and clear in their thought, can manifest with the best of them every day, every hour, every week. Malcolm is perfect of that. With a dog, with a car. Everybody has their story to what they've done. But you got to believe it. All right, Malcolm, if there's anything in closing, what would you tell people if you had a moment? In a closing thought.
Go with your heart. Manifest your heart's desire, because the more energy that you can put behind it, the easier things become. Stay focused. Keep it simple.
That's awesome, because it's wholeheartedly true. Kelly, what would you tell people?
I tell one of my friends all the time, half jokingly, but I'm always sincere about it, is it's the little things, like you said, be grateful. Just if you couldn't find something, and then all of a sudden you find that one thing in the morning, and it could be an ink pen that's your favorite pen. It's the little things, and that can lead to bigger, more positive thinking.
And that's a good one. The one that I always tell people, 2 things. Every time that you sit down on a chair, even, let's put it this way, that you sit down, you've taken a bath, you're getting out of the bath, you sit down on the side of the bathtub. Please understand, your butt never physically touches the bathtub. There is a layer of energy between it and you, keeping the two of you separated so that you don't become part of the bathtub. Your butt will never touch the chair, the bathtub, anything that you pick up. You never physically touch it. What you are doing is controlling energy to pick it up, to grasp it. So that's number 1. Understand, you are manipulating energy every day, every minute, without thinking about it. Number 2, if you could envision just for a minute an atom, it's got a nucleus and electrons that fly all around it, right? That's 99% empty space between the nucleus and the electrons. 99% empty space. Your body is actually nothing but atoms and electrons. Your body's actually 99% empty space. If you could take something small enough to stick in between the atoms and you would pass right through, just like a neutrino. But here's the fun part. Your body is 100% energy in motion. All of it. So when you say, I just don't have the energy, bullshit, you do. Your body's living proof of it. It's electricity in your brain that goes out to the muscles to pick something up. It's electricity in your brain that creates a thought to give somebody a hug, to feel an emotion. So you're manipulating energy all the time. You are a magical kind of thing walking around. That's what I like to tell people. All right, folks. Thank you for joining us this evening. It has been an interesting topic. We've kind of covered an awful lot of material. We will have the replay on our podcast. If you need to, you can go to our website at www.terraturas.com. See, does that sound like movie phone or what? It's the announcer. But you can go to our website at www.terraturas.com, click on podcast, and you'll see, I've got to add Google, but we are now on 10 different podcasting systems. We are picked up in more than 10 different countries around the world right now, but all of our shows are there from show 12 up until now on podcast. You can go to our website, again, terraturas.com. You can check out previous videos. If you go to YouTube and search for terraturas.com, you can see all of our previous shows. And I'm trying to think if there was anything else. I don't think so, but we will be back again next week with another show and adding some of our old cast and some new members. We're going to be doing that for the next couple of weeks, adding new people. So join us again next week on Terra Turas, Wednesday nights at 9 o'clock. I hope everybody has a great night, and we'll see you again next week. Take care, everybody.